Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome once again to the Meat and Potato Show, conservative talk and awesome rock. And I am your host, Christopher Mader. And the candidate interview series continues on here on the Meat and Potato Show. We are getting closer and closer to the August 30th Candidate Symposium. Invites are going out everywhere. Mark's got an invite. And I want to welcome my guest who's calling in from the South Shore area of Massachusetts, running for the 9th District from U.S. Congress out in Massachusetts. And I spoke to one of his opponents a few weeks ago, Vince Cogliano Jr. His name is Mark Alliegro. Mark Alliegro is, I got to get on his site here. He is Harvard. He works at Harvard University. Let's see. Mark Alliegro is a distinguished scientist, researcher, and educator. He is also a family man, married for 32 years to Mary Ann. And Mark is a senior scientist at the Marine Biological Laboratory in Woods Hole and a professor of molecular biology, cellular biology, and biochemistry at Brown University. And he holds a Bachelor of Science in Marine Biology from Fairleigh Dickinson University, and a master's in marine science from the University of Maryland, a PhD in anatomy and cell biology from SUNY Buffalo, and postdoctorate fellow at Duke University. So this guy has it all pretty well put together here, and he's running for Congress out of the 9th District here in Massachusetts. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show, Mark Alliegro. How are you, Mark? Good to talk to you.
Doing very well. Thank you, Chris.
Good to have you on here, sir. One of the things I wanted to ask you to start off with, what got you, I mean, you've got quite a resume. Obviously, you're happy in this life. What made you decide to run for Congress? I mean, what happened?
You mean, where did I go wrong? Is that
exactly.
Well, you know, I'm becoming, my wife and I were never involved directly in politics until a few years ago. And, you know, and we became involved because we became more and more disenchanted with what we see around the country, both, you know, in the government and culturally. And we know a lot of people who are very unhappy. And of course, I don't know anybody who's happy with how things are going in this country.
Oh, good God, no.
And I finally got to the point where I said, you know, this isn't the same country that it was. It's not the same great country that my parents handed me, and so I'm going to do something about it.
The people that I've spoken to, the candidates that I've interviewed, just this last year alone, they know what's going on. But there was always in the past that, well, I'm a Democrat or I'm a Republican, and this is who I'm voting for, and I'm going with this because that, you know, that's the way I am. There's been a sea change, I think, this year in that everybody is starting to see through the fog. They are seeing that both sides are just as complicit. And I'm calling this administration a criminal regime. I mean, the stuff these guys get away with. We're going to cover something in a couple of minutes. Folks, wait till you hear this thing that I'm going to talk about. But everybody's waking up. Are you seeing that out there on the campaign trail, that it's no longer, well, I'm a Democrat or I'm a Republican, so I'm going for this guy? Are you seeing that people are waking up, and they're saying that? They're saying, we're sick of this stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot less of it, and I see it in several different ways. And one way I saw it was when during the signature drive, when I was collecting my signatures to get on the ballot. And I think we had something like 700 Democrats sign my petition sheets.
Really?
And yeah, I mean, and we weren't going to turn them away. We had over 4,500 raw signatures, and we weren't going to turn them away. And you know, what I would say to them is, look, this isn't Republican or Democrat. I'm a Republican. I've been a Republican almost my entire life. But this isn't Republican or Democrat anymore. This is about being an American patriot or being a globalist. Mm-hmm. And people understand that. And even Democrats are disenchanted with this current administration.
Let's talk about something. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I mean, the other way I see it, I still see a little bit lingering. A little bit of the old party loyalty. I was speaking to a woman yesterday or the day before at one of the street fairs I was at, and she said, are you a Republican or a Democrat? And I said, I'm a Republican. And she said, well, then I can't see myself voting for a Republican. And I said, well, you know, why not? And she said, well, and she really didn't have an answer. Just straight Democrat, that's all she cared about.
Interesting.
But there's less of that than I've known in, I think, my lifetime.
That's interesting. Yeah, so, yeah, you're right. And I'm right. That's why I asked the question, and I've asked it on several candidates that, yeah, you do run into those stalwarts, but you're right. It's becoming less and less. People are cutting through, and they're seeing exactly what's going on. And folks, here's one of the things that's going on. And you mentioned on your website Operation Choke Point. I'll just read a little bit here. With no statutory authority, the secretive effort began by the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. See, this is what I mean. They always backdoor channel this stuff in. It was started in 2011 at the urging of Barack Obama, and he declared that gun stores are high-risk businesses. And high-risk businesses have been, up until now, small categories, supposedly disreputable businesses. They've included like pornographers, sellers of drug paraphernalia. I understand that, but here's what they're doing. They're listing gun store owners, and you went down to, what's the name of the store here? You went down to Powderhorn Outfitters in Hyannis. Yes, and he's already experienced. He was having trouble getting crediting and getting credit to make his payroll and process his credit reports and his credit cards and stuff. Talk to us about this. Talk to us about Operation Choke Point, and talk to us about your experience at the Powderhorn Outfitters in Hyannis. Go ahead.
Sure. Well, first of all, this is pretty ironic because in our lifetimes there has been no president that has made gun retailers and manufacturers and ammunition salespeople a more solid business than this current president. You know that sales have skyrocketed on firearms and ammunition.
Yes. Yes.
So the Powderhorn has been there for a long time. It's a standard, well-known business in the area. Mr. Cohen's credit is great, and but this is just another way that the federal government these days uses backdoor means to accomplish their ends, even if they're nefarious means. So they're going at the gun manufacturing and the gun lobby in every which way, as you know, including trying to put restrictions on the production of lead ammunition on the basis of EPA regulations and contamination. So everything and anything that they can do, they will do to reach their ends. And Operation Choke Point is just another means of doing it.
Yeah, because they can't do it through the front door. They can't do it. They can't out and out say, no, we're going to ban the guns. They can't defy the Second Amendment of the Constitution. And like you said, Americans out there are buying tons of guns and tons of ammunition because they know this. Again, this brings me back to my original statement in the beginning of the interview. People are cutting through. They're seeing what's really going on. So yeah, that's what they employ here. And like you said, it's the first time an administration has ever targeted gun owners or gun sales people this certain way. And I wanted to say that it seems like this administration, it's headed up by political theorists. Nobody's really got any actual military experience, no actual public service experience, foreign policy experience. I've gone through, they might have served on this council or on this board, or they were president of this organization or president of that school, but none of them have a military background. None of them served as undersecretary to such and such from 1984 to 1990. You know what I mean, the long accolades that you usually see with people who take up these higher positions in government. This whole administration is made up of theorists. And that's pretty much what they're operating off of, aren't they, sir? They're just throwing out theories out there, seeing what sticks.
Well, by comparison, I mean, if you compare them to the president, they're vastly more experienced.
Yeah.
But you have to go right back to the root of it. I mean, look at the president of the United States.
Yeah.
This is a man who, 6 years ago, every single person in this country understood was not by any means qualified to be the president of the most powerful nation in the world. But they wanted him in. The media wanted him in, and they didn't vet him at all, let alone very well. And so you have a president who went from being a community organizer to a senator for a couple of years, and an absentee senator at that, and to president of the United States. And now you have these same people, the Keatings of the world, and all of his acolytes in Congress who pushed and told us that he was a qualified individual. Now we have them starting to beat the drums for Elizabeth Warren. So here again, we have a woman who is utterly, virtually inexperienced in government and in governance, and she'll be a senator for a year, 2 years, and they're already trying to push her into the White House.
Well, that is so bizarre. I almost want to say that sounds like there's a plot going on. Is this going to be like the thing now for Democrats? Oh, get him into Senate for a year, and then we'll make him run for president. Everyone will vote for him. Don't worry about it.
Well, I mean, the last two Democratic presidents before this, Clinton and Carter, weren't exactly what you would call the most experienced diplomats or men in the world. I mean, yes, presidents often come as governors or come from governors' mansions. George Bush at least, spent 2 terms as in one of the largest states in the country,
Sure.
and was a CEO in a company or two. Jimmy Carter was the governor of what then was a small state. Of course, Georgia has grown since and significantly. And of course, Bill Clinton was the governor of Arkansas, a tiny state at the time. So it seems that we keep on reducing or lowering the bar for these Democratic presidents.
Right. I do see what you're saying.
And meanwhile, we pass over men like Bob Dole, who not only served in the military, but served as a senator for many years. George Bush, the senior, who served as a diplomat and in the military and head of the CIA.
Yeah.
So we just keep going to people who are less and less qualified on the Democrat side.
That sounds so bizarre. But again, are people recognizing this? Do you think you hear that out there as you're talking to the constituents, that they're seeing that dumbing down, that lesson, that it's like what you do with when you're cooking, you have to lessen down the liquid just so that you can get to the good stuff. But in this case, we're not getting to the good stuff, are we?
Well, I think everybody, with the exception of a few, I think everybody recognizes how unqualified this individual in the White House is. And they did then. Some people, after recognizing it, then proceeded to dump their heads into the sand.
Right. Let's look at some.
For him to not see it.
Yeah, let's look at some more stuff here. The crisis on the border, that's a manufactured crisis. And this is a classic case of government creating a problem, a crisis, and then, of course, rushing in to solve the crisis and being the hero of the day. Now, would you consider this another act of their criminal act, or is this just more of their incompetency? What's your take on that?
I don't know if I can answer that, and either way is almost as bad as the other. Let me put in a little plug here.
Go ahead.
I made a trip down to the border at the very end of May, before this business really heated up. And a lot of good has come from it. I learned a lot. And in fact, on August 1st, Friday, in the Falmouth Public Library, we're holding a forum on the border and immigration. It'll be at 6:30, and we have a panel of former INS and State Department experts who will be able to answer questions from the audience. And I'll first describe some of the things that we saw when we went down there. So, incompetence or nefarious, I can't answer that. I'm almost afraid to answer, Chris. I just don't know.
I don't blame you. And thank you for your honesty on that, because this is still a fluid situation. We know that there are lots of them coming even here to Massachusetts. I was talking to a guy, Nick Wukason, down in Florida. He isn't aware of Florida actually having plane loads of people come into, Orlando or Miami or wherever. But I did address the question, and he was honest enough to say that he's not too sure on how to answer that, or if he should answer that, because it's a fluid situation. And I appreciate your honesty on that. But we can still move on to some more policy stuff here. Let's look at what's going on in Gaza. We're seeing in the media already the standard leftist anti-Israel news coverage. What's your take on this? What are you hearing from people out there? And what's your position on defense of Israel?
Well, I think it's sort of the same thing as with the border and with everything else. People have become so overwhelmed. There's so many things hitting us now.
Yeah.
That they're starting to be being willing to open their eyes. So before, you might have had some Democrats that would give Obama a pass on one thing or two things, but it's become such a deluge that people are starting to admit that there are problems. Now, in Israel, we've got the same thing that's been going on for my whole lifetime, and in truth, probably for about 600 years. But no country should have to stand pat while rockets are being lobbed into their cities.
Yes, exactly.
And Israel is defending themselves, and that's all there is to it.
might be a sea change going on with this guy as well. That's
No, I don't think so. I don't know.
No.
I don't know what motivated him to open up at least one eye this time, but at least from his actions at the moment, he seems to get it this time briefly.
Either way, whether he supports it or not, Netanyahu isn't going to take anybody else's crap, and he's going to do whatever he's going to have to do to defend his country, and I completely support him. My big problem is what I said earlier in the question. I mean, it's this constant. You see it all the time from the left. Oh, it is apartheid in Israel. Oh, the poor Palestinian race, the poor Palestinian people. And they always keep talking about these things that don't exist. There's no apartheid in Israel. There's no such thing as a Palestinian race. And they talk about how Israel is the evil aggressor all the time, and that's all we seem to hear. But yet somebody like myself, and you're an intelligent man, and other people who have been on my show, I mean, we do our research, and we study our history, and it's quite the opposite history is what's going on down there. And this is what I was saying in the question. It's this, we keep seeing this thing over and over and over again, just handed to us through the news, and I'm just personally getting tired of it.
Yeah, well, some people like to latch on to popular terms, and amongst the popular terms for some folks are the terms genocide and apartheid,
Yes.
and so whenever and they conjure up racism too. That's a good one for some of these people.
That's always a good one for the left.
Yeah, whenever whenever they want to take a side, they find it handy to accuse the other side of apartheid or genocide. But I'll tell you, I mean, they're even applying this to countries like Honduras, where they're saying that these children that are flooding across the border, and believe me, there's lots more than just children flooding across the border, but they're even saying that these people are facing genocide if they go back. Genocide, apartheid. There's one place in the world right now where true genocide is taking place. There's one and only one, well, I shouldn't say one and only one, but there is one place in the world where genocide is certainly taking place, and that's in the Middle East, and that's the genocide of Christians in Iraq.
Yes.
And in the new ISIS territories.
Yes.
The same people who are so quick to use the terms apartheid and genocide somehow seem to overlook this, and it's highly underreported.
I think that's part of the psychosis of liberalism. I call it a psychosis. It really is. They get to pick and choose their outrage, whatever fits good on the current 6 o'clock news. I said something years ago in one of my blogs, you can always tell a liberal. Well, how can you tell a liberal? Well, see if the finger's wet. What do you mean if the finger's wet? Because they're always licking it and holding it up to the political winds. And whichever way that wind is blowing, that's leaning for that. Which way they're leaning for that day. And it really is. And yeah, getting back to what I said in the original part of the beginning part of the interview, people are truly waking up. Let's move on here. You cover some jobs. 175,000 pages of rules and regulations contained in the Code of Federal Regulations. I was just at the library a little while ago, down in Worcester, Mass, and they always get rid of old books and stuff that isn't being circulated, and they always have a free shelf there. There was an entire top shelf of federal regulations and codes. I'm telling you, these books, I mean, you could burn them as logs in a fireplace. And I just thumbed through a few of them. It is unfathomable that how do even these people know what's in these books, let alone a small business? Let's get back to the gun store that you visited. That poor guy, the amount of regulations that he has to go through. These regulations aren't put here to actually help a situation or help a business. I don't even think they're there to help whatever it is they were originally designed to help. Instead, they just crush business, they cripple businesses, and again, tell us what you've been seeing out there, and you work in business also. Tell us what you've experienced.
Well, let me tell you first a little bit of information that you can digest and your listeners can digest. When I first started out on the campaign trail, as you know or may know, and now your listeners will know, I'm a strong advocate for smaller and less intrusive government. And so early on, one of the things, let me broaden this a little bit. So I know that this Congress is called the Do Nothing Congress because they only pass, this year I think they were on, at the time I looked this up, they were on pace to pass something like 68 or 70 laws total for the year. So, passed by Congress and then signed into law search term something to the effect of how many federal laws or federal regulations do we have? And the search result came back, and something like the second or the third result from the top was a page from the Library of Congress. So I said, well, this is good. This should be a good source because it's probably, not relatively nonpartisan. And I went to that page, and the Library of Congress said that the number of laws, federal laws that we have, are almost unknowable. Those are the words that I found on the Library of Congress page. Almost unknowable. Now, in my understanding is there's only a couple of things almost unknowable in the world, and that includes the number of grains of sand on the beach and the number of stars in the universe. So to that we can add our federal regulations. So, it's remarkable, and you have people clamoring for more laws and regulations. And that's only federal. That doesn't include state and city laws and regulations that we have to build in.
And we seem to be obsessed as a society with it, almost to the point of drug addiction, where there always has to be another law. There always has to be something else. And we've completely departed from the notion of what this country was founded on, which is for government to stay the hell out of everyone's life and stay the hell out of the way and be as limited as possible so that the rest of the country can prosper and grow and create and build and invent, and people can have children and live their lives in freedom and safety and just be left alone. Yet it's weird. We're on this, it's like we've landed in Bizarro World or something, and we just always keep thinking, oh, there's got to be a law. Oh, somebody should pass a law. There ought to be a law. Somebody ought to do something about that. It seems to be all we hear.
And the unfortunate thing is that we don't enforce the laws that we have. And if we did, we would find in many, many cases that we don't need a new law to govern some behavior or some activity. That the laws already exist. As far as I'm concerned, there are a lot of laws that need to be undone.
Sure.
And of course, one of them is, what, the Unaffordable Care Act.
Yeah, that was insane. I know. Go ahead, talk to us. Talk to us about it.
Well, when people ask me my position on it, I point out to them that law was enacted, ostensibly, to accomplish two things. And the two things were, one, to reduce the cost of health insurance, and two, to make sure that the 30 to 50 million presumably uninsured people in this country were insured. It has failed on both counts.
Yes.
So we know that the cost of insurance is skyrocketing in the different states at different rates, all around the country. And of course, the model for that was what's mistakenly called Care in our state. But since the Massachusetts health plan went into effect, the prices have skyrocketed, and Massachusetts has gone from one of the more expensive healthcare states, to becoming the most expensive state in the country for healthcare insurance.
It is insane.
So it did not keep the cost down, and the cost is going to keep on rising, both in terms of just hard cash and paying for premiums, and in the jobs that it's going to cost us. Now, the other purpose was to ensure the 30 to 50 million uninsured. And at the moment, we have more uninsured than we did when we started this silly program.
Certainly.
And the projections from the CBO the Congressional Budget Office, are that by 2025, we should be back down to 30 to 40 million uninsured. And those are probably rosy projections. So
essentially where we started from. Essentially where we started from.
That's correct. And you know, and I know, that projections like that are always rosy.
Sure, right.
They're always rosy,
yeah. By and large, we all know that things just pretty much generally get worse. They will get worse. Yes, I've covered this on the show. I've spoken to people back in 2009, 2010, people who were in the insurance agency. Essentially, and my audience has heard me say this before, essentially everything that we are seeing happening now, me and my guests and I, we spoke about this in 2009, 2010. It's already, and we got all sorts of people saying, oh, you're crazy, oh, you're against Obama, you don't want things. We're all like, look, we're telling you, I'm talking to people who are leaders in the business, And sure enough, here we are in 2014, and everything is it's happening exactly as we said it would, and it's insane. Again, but this brings me back. People see this now, and they're like, well, wait a minute. You know, where the heck was all this stuff? It's like things are supposed to be going a certain way, and they're not going this way. We have militarized police. We have gun laws just coming in through the back door. Everybody's eventually going to get their gun in America away at some point in time in America. You mark my words, I'm telling you, it's going to come. I mean, I've already been down to Connecticut. I've seen what's going on down there. And at some point, I was going to say, you can take it over in a second. At some point in time, I'm worried that, you know, it's going to come to such a head that one of two things are going to happen. Either people are going to wake up and revolt and vote everybody out, or there might even be a little bit of violence in the street. I don't condone it, but it's a healthy thing every once in a while. Or you're going to see false flag incidents. You're going to see some other new crisis come down the road, and the government's just going to clamp down even harder. One or the other. What do you think?
Well, first of all, the reality is what you're suggesting, that there's a fear of violence. That's obvious by the actions of both the government and the citizenry. That's why the government is bulking up the Department of Homeland Security and buying massive amounts of ammunition. That's why our local police departments and sheriff's departments are becoming almost like militarized organizations.
Yes.
And that's why people are buying ammunition so fast they can't keep it on the shelves. So there's a fear on both sides, and it's well-grounded, a fear of civil unrest. But I have to tell you, I'm optimistic that we're going to do it politically rather than through any unrest.
Certainly.
And why I think that is, I look at what's been happening for the past 5 or 6 years, and now I'm going to go into my little preaching mode, because I told people that in a backhanded sort of way, the guy that's in the Oval Office right now may have been the best thing that could have ever happened to this country, because without him, we were headed on a long, slow, downward spiral into European-style socialism and authoritarianism. But his incompetence and overreach of his administration has awakened millions of people in this country. So let me tell you what I'm talking about. I'm going to give you some facts.
You go right ahead, sir.
Yeah, not polls, real numbers. And I like to first point out with an anecdote or with an individual example, and that's Wisconsin. Right, 6 years ago, who would have thought that today Wisconsin was almost as bad as Massachusetts, would have a conservative Republican governor, a conservative state house, and a conservative Senate. Now, let me tell you that 6 years ago, there were only 9 states in this country that could boast that. Now, 5.5 years short years later, there are 24 states like that.
Yeah, yeah.
24 states.
Yeah.
So, you know, and it's been a complete reversal. Back then, there were 16 Democrat states like that, and 9 Republican. Now it's 24 to 11.
Yeah.
Stop and think that 5.5 years ago, they had a majority of governorships. Now we have 30, and they have 20. Stop and think about the House. When he came into office, they had a strong majority in the U.S. House. Now they have a minority.
Mm-hmm.
In the Senate, they had a supermajority. Now it's been reduced to a majority, and hopefully in a few months it's going to be reduced to a minority.
Yes, it will be.
So this is a massive sea change. And in each and every one of these states, where it's controlled by Republicans and there's more of a conservative influence, these states are enacting voter ID laws, they're enacting right-to-work laws, and you know, by and large, their economies are gaining strength, and the big deficits are decreasing. So sanity is coming back, but we have to nurture it, and we've been awakened, we're fighting, we have to fight even harder now, because the other side knows it's losing, and they become shrill and desperate, and they'll fight harder like a caged animal. So we have to be tough, we have to get out and support the right candidates, and keep this momentum going.
Tell us about your time working down in Woods Hole. And the reason why I want to ask you that question is because of what's going on with things like Agenda 21, the screaming and yelling about supposed global warming, or what they call climate change, or whatever they're going to call it come Monday morning. but you were down there. You worked in that business. You were there. So tell us again. Tell us what you experienced, and did you run into anybody who I am going to assume, correct me if I'm wrong, that you are not on board with this global warming theory. And did you run into anybody down there that gave you a hard time about that? Tell us about all that.
Sure. Well, you're correct. I'm not on board with it, and I'm here to tell you a couple of things about it. First of all, as soon as you challenge the concept of man-made global warming, and let's separate. There's two different questions here: global warming and man-made global warming.
Yes.
And as soon as you challenge the concept of man-made global warming, you're called a denier. You're told that it's settled science. You're told that 97% of scientists are on board.
Science consensus is not scientific.
Yeah. So first, let me tell you some things here. As a scientist, and one who's done fairly well in my career, so I'm not a dope. I've done pretty well. As a scientist, I'm here to tell you that there is no such thing as settled science. There's no such thing as settled science. 55 years ago, or less, I'm sorry, about 45, 50 years ago, there was no such thing as continental drift. And now we understand that that's the way the Earth's crust works.
Certainly.
Okay, so there's no such thing as settled science. Now, the other thing is the question of whether or not the Earth is warming at all. I think the answer to that is probably yes, since it has been warming since we emerged from the last great ice age about 18, 20,000 years ago. And indeed has been warming in our own relatively modern history since we emerged from the small ice age, which our emergence from that just preceded the Industrial Revolution. So there's no evidence that something that man has done has created global warming. Indeed, if you look into the literature a little bit, you'll find that Mars, Jupiter, and Pluto are also deemed to be not probably, they are warming. So, as far as I know, there's no cow flatulence on Mars, and there are no SUVs on Pluto, and no farm runoff on Jupiter.
Right.
So man is not causing global warming on those planets, and there's no direct evidence to indicate that we're causing it on this planet.
What's interesting is, go ahead.
And I could go on, but it's silly.
It is silly. I don't have your degrees, but I did a meteorology course when I was with the U.S. Coast Guard Search and Rescue, and when I was younger, that was just one of the things I was very much interested in during when I was in high school, when I was studying geography and physical geography. And this thing that came out last winter, this polar vortex thing, my wife turns to me, she's like, "What is that?" I was like, "I've never heard of that before." So I actually had to dig out my old books and go on. I was like, this thing is just made up. This thing is just like some current word. It's like I've never heard of this stuff. I've heard of all sorts of cold fronts. I've heard of low pressure fronts. I can tell you all about all of that stuff, but I've never heard of a polar vortex. At that time there was all this stuff going out on the web that it was people were actually cold. That people were actually posting pictures of Mars, saying that today it was actually warmer on Mars than it was here in Maine or in Canada. But this brings me to the point of there's no settled science. The Earth is so old that we, as humans, in the short time that we've been here, we can't fathom what went on 1 billion years ago or 500 million years ago, what the climate was like, or what was causing it to change. We can theorize, we can look at the evidence, we can form an idea, but we really, really don't know. So now, for us to sit there and say that, oh, we're destroying the planet because of SUVs and fossil fuels, that's really great.
We can estimate fairly well what happened in prehistory. There are ways to estimate what happened.
Sure. But we don't really know, though.
You understand that the Earth has undergone wild swings in climate that dwarf the ones that we're currently facing. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't help the argument at all. Let me just tell you that I have friends that are meteorologists and earth scientists that are not on board with this whole shenanigan. In fact, I was at, I have a Georgia appointment for I was coming out of class one day, and one of the students in the molecular biology class came up to me and said, I have a statistics professor, and he said the statistics on all of this stuff are just wacky, they're wrong.
No,
it's just a political bludgeon. It's a political bludgeon.
The other thing too, do you think the reason why the people that stick to this theory is because that's where the money is? I mean, these people are getting all sorts of endorsements from everywhere. The UN, they're getting it from the federal government, they're getting it from other political groups. It's the money, isn't it?
Yeah, and I could tell you little stories about that. I won't even bother right now because there's not enough time. But yeah, I mean that has something to do with it, particularly with some people. Maybe not with a lot of people, but with some people, it's the grant money. For the ones that are the real perpetrators, like the Al Gores of the world, it's really all about control and power.
Yes. Thank you.
And,
Thank you. So what's next for you? Stop. What's next campaign stop? What's going on with the Alliegro campaign?
Well, first of all, we're looking forward to the September 9th primary.
Yes.
So please, everybody, come out and vote. I would urge everyone, as a starter point, to please go to the websites of all 4 congressional candidates and look. I think before you get through doing that, you'll then make your mind up about which is probably the most qualified and right-minded candidate. I think that we're doing quite well. We've had now 4, I don't want to call them debates. By today's standards, they're debates. We've had 2 debates and 2 public forums, after which there was a straw poll. And our campaign has won all 4 of those events handily. The last one was at the Mashpee, was sponsored by the Mashpee Republican Town Committee, and we garnered 67% of the vote. The other 33% were shared by the remaining 3 candidates.
Amazing.
That's how it's gone, and it's gotten so bad for the one particular candidate who was, the establishment's favorite, when this whole process began, that he's actually pulled out of our next scheduled debate. It was supposed to be.
Really?
It was supposed to be, yeah. The Falmouth Republican Town Committee debate, a real debate, a Lincoln Douglas style debate.
Excellent.
And but apparently some people are afraid to get involved in a real debate, and so they pulled out. So there's a couple more coming down the pike. There'll be one on WXTK, hosted by Pat Dismaris. I think my opponent, Mr. Chapman, will find it difficult to pull out of such a public endeavor.
I've sent Chapman a few invites to my August 30th candidate symposium. I know I've sent them to you, and I'll probably send you another one. They're on. I know I've seen them on your Facebook page. I was on your Facebook page today, and they're still there from the last times I put them there. If you can make it, please make it. Check out the details on the page. I did talk to Vince Cargliano about that. He's not sure. He's going to try. He's not sure. Again, I know it's getting close to primary, but I did plan it for that because we're like on the doorstep of primary, and I think it would be a great thing for all the candidates, as many as possible, to get together. And again, it's not a debate that I'm having on August 30th. It's a forum, it's a symposium where we all get together. We've all got great ideas from the left, from the right. I'm going to have libertarians there, independents, Republicans, some Democrats are going to be there. Mark Fisher's showing up there. And the way the whole thing's going to be moderated and the way the questionnaires are going to be set. But it's just a chance to give everybody a chance to talk about the issues and what's going on, and about, most importantly, the campaign process. Because like I had said to you, and I've said to some of my other guests, that there seems to be this favoritism going on, and I've seen it in Oregon, I've seen it in Texas, I've seen it down in Florida. Some of the guests I've had on who have been from those states, there seems to be a theme going on here that the GOP has already picked their golden boy, and in some cases they out and out ignore and push away some of the other Tea Party candidates and the grassroots candidates. And well, that's why my show exists, is to give all you guys that equal voice, that equal time, and this is why I'm having this symposium, so that everybody can get together and hash it all out. So if Chapman isn't going to show up at this thing that you're going to, I doubt very much that he's going to be at the symposium itself, because
I'd be willing. Yeah, I'd wager against it. I think I have to say that I think this is a little bit of an odd case. I think the Mass GOP is largely keeping their hands off this race and letting us duke it out, because I think they saw very quickly that it was much more of a race than they ever anticipated. And I think they see, a candidate they didn't expect to be outperforming the one that they did expect to do well.
Certainly.
So they're kind
And you've already.
So I just want to make the pitch to everybody out there. You must understand, please, that we're up against a bit of a political machine that has some fundraising capacity.
Yeah.
So please, if you can, see your way clear to contributing, either as a volunteer or with a cash contribution, go to the website and do it. Because we have these folks in our rearview mirror. We can't let them catch up and pass us by in the last couple of weeks.
Interesting. You've gotten some great endorsements. Texas Congressman Lamar Smith, Jeff Deal right here, state rep here in Massachusetts. I was hobnobbing with Jeff Deal a week or so ago at the automatic gasoline tax party at Buca's there in Shrewsbury. Great guy, great thing that he did doing the automatic gasoline petition, which is going to be on the ballot. But yeah, this is what the grassroots does. I mean, we bust the hump. We really do. You guys are out there really busting it, trying to get the word out there. People like Jeff Deal and Desiree, who got the automatic gasoline tax thing pushed through to go on a ballot. That was all just quite literally by the sweat of our brow. And folks, this is what candidates like Mark Alliegro is doing. He's literally just rolling up his sleeves and getting his hands dirty and getting out there and campaigning the old-fashioned way. And Mark, I want to thank you for coming on to the show this afternoon. What a great conversation, sir. I'd love to try to squeeze you in again. I'm going to send you some open dates. If you can get one in, take one. And if you've got August 30th open, please come to the August Candidate Symposium. Mark, thank you so much for being on the show.
Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to your audience. Please, everybody, go to the website, markallegroforcongress.org, and do whatever you can. Get involved this year. Get involved. We can send the thunderbolts up the tailpipes of this establishment this year, and your help will be grateful for it.
All right, Mark, we will be talking to you on the flip side. Have a good day, sir.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Excellent. That was a great interview. Mark Alliegro is running out of the 9th District, Massachusetts. He's running for U.S. Congress. And we will be speaking to Mark again. Christopher Mader, The Meat and Potato Show. Conservative talk and awesome rock.